Hello, good afternoon. This is Jorge Araguez from Katia Home Properties, and we are very pleased to make a video today talking about mortgages. For that one, we invited and we have the honor to have here Terence Reilly, and the name of the company that he represents, he owns, it's Mexlend. So we're going to ask him to tell a little bit about the company, a little bit about himself, and how mortgages work in Puerto Vallarta specifically.
Okay.
Good afternoon. How are you today?
Good afternoon. I'm fine. Thank you. Thank you for inviting me here.
Thank you for
Very
coming.
nice of you.
And let us know, let the people know a little bit about you. How do you arrive to Puerto Vallarta? How do you create your company? And which kind of services we can get from your company now?
Sure. Mexlend was founded with my partner David Schwindeman 20 years ago. We moved from New York City. We were in New York City when we founded the company. We put the company together before moving to Puerto Vallarta. So when we moved to Puerto Vallarta, everything was all set and we were ready to go. This was back in the day when there was no financing available in Mexico, and we were part of the first group of mortgage brokers. That's what we are, as a mortgage brokerage, with the GE Capital loan program. At that time, we didn't want to open our doors until we could offer people a choice. So at that time, there were several companies, and eventually we had 9 lenders that we were working with at that time. Our focus has always been for foreigners purchasing property in Mexico. Those foreigners can be US or Canadian. And also we have a program for dual nationals. That's been a very busy program lately. There are many people who are Mexican citizens who live in the United States, and they're looking back to Mexico to buy, and maybe for their retirement, like other people are, or maybe to be closer to their families, but there are special programs for them to purchase back home using their income and their credit from the United States.
That is one of the questions. I mean, I imagine that it may exist a lot of combination. People who live here and has the income in the state, people who live in the state and has income here. I mean, which are the possibilities that we have if we want to get, or if someone want to get a mortgage here?
Well, again, that's part of what a mortgage brokerage does, and we really pride ourselves on offering the most products or more products than any other company in Mexico, and we always have. We've been very diligent in developing new sources for loans. Okay. Almost every single lender that is working now in Mexico has been introduced to the country by me or by my company. We've contacted them. We've talked to them about the market, we've talked to them about the possibilities, and gone through all of the legal issues to make them feel comfortable. And we've even set them up with their whole string of lawyers in all the different markets, notaries in all the different markets, appraisers in all the different markets. And how this affects for our clients, the borrowers, is that we have a really deep knowledge and a deep well of experience of doing these transactions in Mexico. And it's really important because we all try to make it seamless. You as realtors, we try to make it as comfortable for our clients as possible, but there are a lot more legal machinations behind the scenes that are going on before we get to the closing table. So we try to make that as smooth as possible for the clients when they get there.
How long it takes in time? I mean, from the moment that well, it depends on the client, right?
It does depend on the client, and it depends on the property.
Okay.
You know, one of the things that realtors in Mexico are always a little bit leery about financing for their clients. We even have some realtors who will say there is no financing available because it's just easier for them.
Yes.
But I will say that those generally are realtors who don't have a whole lot of experience. The reality is that you should, as a realtor, be able to offer your clients everything that's available to them and let them make the decision as to whether or not it works for them. The time to close, once we have an approval for a client, that lender wants the money gone. So once we have an approval, it's the same as closing with all cash. If there are any delays with an approval, it's because there's some problem or there's something that needs to be fixed with the paperwork on the property itself. Or it could be that there's a delay with government permits. All of the things that you would normally get with a cash closing are going to be the same delays that you could experience with financing. But once we have that approval, it should go quickly.
In your opinion, do you think there is much easier or there is any difficulty if you ask for a mortgage buying through a fideicomiso, or it has nothing to do? The process is the same one?
It's the same. It pretty much is the same. The majority of the lenders who are in this market now actually use the fideicomiso or a specific kind of fideicomiso for these loans. It's a fideicomiso garantia and a guaranteed trust. So that is the actual loan mechanism that's at work, and the protection for the lender and for the borrowers as well. So it really doesn't make any difference in that regard for the client. The main thing that will help us to get your clients approved quickly is that they give us all of their documentation in a quick manner. I mean, we do everything we can to help them with that. We'll give them, a special way to upload their documents into our system, and all of these things to make it go faster. But if they're slow to give us the documents, they'll say, "Oh, this is taking forever," and it's like, "Well, we're still waiting for your tax returns," which means the lender is not even going to move anywhere without a complete file.
And talking about that time, talking about the approval time, is better to wait for the approval before starting looking for a home, or is better to start looking for a home and in the meantime trying to get the approval of the mortgage?
I think it's best for the client to get the commitment for a loan before they start their process. If they know that they're going to need financing to close on a property, they should get that lined up, because that makes them a more serious client for the sellers as well.
Correct.
The seller knows that they've already been qualified for the loan. The seller knows that the money is available. In the market that we moved from in New York City before we moved to Mexico, realtors could not even take a client out until they had proof of funds to close. So it's the same kind of concept. We're not that draconian here, I guess, but it really does help the client to be taken seriously if they have already done that extra due diligence on their part.
It makes sense. If you have to tell me more or less which are the majority of percentages between which kind of people request mortgages? Canadians, Americans, Mexicans, and in which percentage?
I would say it really, I think there are more Americans from the United States who are purchasing here than all of the above, but Canadians are close behind. And then of course we have our dual nationals, and I would say they go in third place with it, but that's just because of sheer numbers that are happening. There are more people in the United States than there are in Canada, and there are more people in Canada than there are dual nationals or dual citizens in the United States, I think. So it just is, it's just a matter of numbers.
Whenever someone asks for a mortgage and the mortgage is denied for any reason, is there a chance that they can request the mortgage again and it could be approved, or once that is denied, that's over?
No. In fact, that's one of the best reasons to use a broker instead of going directly to a lender. If you're denied from a lender, chances are you're going to think, oh, well, I didn't get a loan. I can't get a loan. Well, you didn't get a loan with that particular lender. And with a broker, we can go through our whole list of lenders and maybe we can find one that suits your needs. For example, we have lenders who will close if a person wants to hold their property in an LLC or a corporation. There are a couple of lenders who will do that, but the majority of them will not. If the lender, we deal with lenders who are both, well, in Canada, the United States, and Mexico. And depending on what country they're in, they view income in a different manner.
Correct.
So if we're dealing with a Mexican lender, when they look at the tax returns, this is all boring, I'm sorry, but when they look at the tax returns, they're looking at your net income. So if we have someone who has a very savvy accountant and they own a lot of properties and they're taking depreciation on their tax returns, they're not going to qualify for a Mexican loan, even though it's not real money leaving their account. In the United States, it's very legal that you deduct depreciation. Well, that doesn't, you're not actually sending money out, you're still keeping that money. Whereas lenders in the United States go from the gross. So they're looking at your gross income for the most part. That's just one little trick that we can use in getting. Some of them require higher credit scores than others. Some will be more forgiving of a glitch that happened in the past if we can explain it to them. And working with a broker will allow you to kind of put all those pieces together and go to the right place. We actually even have a lender, and we've done loans this way, where if the person is, let's say it's an expatriate and living in, or an immigrant, I'll call them an immigrant living in Mexico, and they work here doing whatever they do, they have their company. Maybe they're not reporting all of their income. That's, again, not our business, except we're trying to qualify them. But we have lenders who will do social studies, who will go to their home, look at their house, how do they live, what is their car, what is their credit, what is their credit score, so that even if they're not really showing an income that would qualify them for a certain amount, perhaps we'll be able to prove that they actually do, and they will approve them on that basis.
Well, actually, going to a broker, I think, make the things much easier, because you know where to go directly and which kind of product you can offer to the client. But the other question is, let's, for example, that you have a client. Normally, the clients are going to ask you which type of banks do you represent, and are going to choose the bank, or is you that going to present the bank to the client?
We present the bank to the client, or we present the lending options to the client.
What happened if the client didn't want to work with or didn't know it?
It's never really happened.
Okay.
And it's they either accept the terms or they don't accept the terms. Part of the reason why it doesn't happen anymore, quite honestly, is we have been in business for so long, and we have a really excellent reputation. I'm very pleased to say that we have a very excellent reputation. Once we have a client and we have a client approved, they're going to close with that. We don't represent any lenders who are going to get a client in trouble. So that's basically it. They're going on our reputation until they find out who the lender is.
So it's more your reputation than the
I believe so, yeah. And so many of the lenders now are funds, investment funds, that nobody's heard of anyway.
That's right.
You could do research on them online, and you can find out that they're real, but really almost nothing is available online about them either, because they're very private.
And I think we have to ask about something that everybody wants to know. Tell me a little bit about interest rates. Since 20 years ago up to now, how do you see the market now? How do you think it will be the market?
Well, interest rates are always something that this is the real decision that people are making of whether or not they're going to get financing or not. Our loans, the loans in Mexico that are available, have always been market rate loans. In the United States, in Canada, and many other countries, their governments support the real estate industry and the banking industry. And they've done so for so many years now that people forget that it didn't always used to be that way. So what we have in the United States is the federal government giving banks money at rock bottom prices at one time almost for free to keep the economy going, and people were getting interest rates of 2.5%, 3.5%. Well, no investor, no bank is going to be happy with a 2.5%, 3% return on their investment. So what does the government do? The government says, well, we'll buy those from you. We'll guarantee that we'll buy them from you if you adhere to a certain level of consistency in the applications. Well, that doesn't happen with our lenders. In Mexico, if we have Mexican lenders, the Mexican government doesn't do that. It just is. It's something different. It's the way loans were done in the United States before the late 1990s. So what we're looking at here at this time are interest rates that are published between 7% and 13.74%.
Again,
It's a
7%
big spread.
and
7% to 13.74.
Okay.
However, I can tell you that no one has gotten a 7% interest rate. The lowest that I have seen here is in recent years is 8.5. And they have to be very highly qualified, and there's a specific lender that is giving, or two lenders actually, that are giving that rate. And not everybody is going to qualify, not every property is going to qualify for it. And both of them take a great deal of time to close. So we have to have a seller on board that's willing to wait for 4 to 5 months to close on the property. And that's something that as a broker we have to be very upfront with for people. So we can say, yes, we can offer you this, and yes, you will qualify, but if you need to close quicker than this, we should probably go with another product. The majority of what is being done now is generally around 12% to 13.74. And the 13.74 is a high end, but that is somebody who has a lower credit score, somebody whose financials are just squeaking by, or maybe it's a corporation buying and they're new and they don't have a history. Yes. So those are all factors that go into it. But what I will say, and this is something that, we all got so spoiled by those low rates in the United States that they forget the majority of wealth that was created in the United States for a long period of time was by the baby boomers, and they paid between 8.5% and 15% for interest rates on their properties. For me, the point is to get into the property. I mean, we have clients who purchased 20 years ago, and they are not complaining about their interest rate because of the appreciation they've seen on their property, and the rentals that they see on their property totally make up for this interest rate. And the great thing about it is you can pay them off. The majority of our loans don't have a prepayment penalty. So, if you're looking at it, with those things in mind, it becomes less onerous. You have to think of the long picture, or maybe you're looking at the short picture. A lot of our clients may have retirement accounts, and if they draw on that retirement account too early, they're going to be penalized, and
Yes.
that penalty is very high.
Yes.
So if they're making the 12% in that account and they get a loan with the 12% interest, and let's say the loan is for $250,000, and instead of taking it out and getting that big tax hit, they can just pedal it through, basically maintaining their evenness until they reach the point where they can go after those funds and then pay off the loan. Think of it as a bridge loan.
I understand, and I agree with you. Actually, when I came to Mexico, I took the maximum that I took at the same time was 3 mortgages. And when you're selling the house, you see the difference between what you paid and now what you are getting
Right.
is the best investment that you can
Exactly.
have. And because you will not get that difference having the money in the bank.
Right.
But even though one of the things that happens to me as a real estate agent is when you talk with a client about the interest, they say, that high, it couldn't be because it seems to be that it's good to have a mortgage because actually you are not working with your money, you are working with
Somebody
the
else's,
bank.
yeah.
But I mean, they are very like afraid about the interest rate, which actually it shouldn't be that way.
But it's understandable because it's shocking. If you've come from a culture that has, or from a country that has, 2.5%, 4.5%, and all of a sudden you're being told it's
But in the past.
12. But again, I'll go back to that. You are so correct. That is in the past. Right now, interest rates in the United States are about 8.5%. Some a little bit higher. And if that's for a primary residence, if you were to buy a vacation property or an investment property, you're going to be paying a higher percentage point. And that puts us pretty equal. That puts us on equal footing right now. So that's one way to look at it. And another way, I'll just give you a real example. 3 years ago, we financed clients in an apartment in Puerto Vallarta. They paid $325 for this condo. It was a 2-bedroom condo. And they sold it 8 months ago for $675. They had it for 3 years and they more than doubled their money on that. And they were paying 10.5% interest. So yes, it was totally worth it for them as an investment to get that.
I mean, sometimes a broker from a popular bank here called me and said, "You want to put money in a special account or whatever?" I said, "No, because I mean, you will never get not even a part of what you can get if you are in buying properties or buying a house. I mean, it's the best investment I think you could have."
And I'm going to interrupt you. I'm sorry. Also a very common misunderstanding is that these people are making all this money. That extra percentage is going in the pocket of these greedy lending people. Well, that's not the case at all. Yeah. I mean, basically what we're looking at, we're dealing with private funds, and private funds have investors like you, investors like me. And what are we going to be happy with as a return of our investment? So they have to promise us that we're going to make 6, 7, 8%. And then their percentage, in order for them to make a profit on it, goes on top of that. It's a normal profit. It's a very slim margin. I have one lender now who's actually at their rates are losing a little bit of money, but they've got their eyes on the long picture because they're building their fund up and going for it. So it's not like people are in Mexico are ripping people off. We're not, doing exorbitant rate. It's just that the money costs the lenders more, and therefore they have to make their profit on it.
And actually, to get a mortgage right now is much more easier than it was in the past. I mean, in the past, you will be scanned, you and all your family, before you get it. In your experience, briefly, how many houses that are sold in the market are with mortgages right now?
That's kind of a trick question, because when we moved here, I would say that maybe only 3% of all homes in Mexico, in all of Mexico, had mortgage financing with them. That included the Mexican population, Mexican banks. It was just not something that people did. They either paid cash or they didn't do it. As you said, they just weren't that readily available. They were very difficult to get, and people just didn't. It wasn't culturally a part of what was happening. That paradigm has totally shifted these days. So if we're looking at the Mexican population, I don't really know what the figures are. I'd have to look at Softel, the official gatekeeper of the numbers for those things, but I believe that number is going to be somewhere around 85 to 90% at this time.
Yeah.
It's done a huge change, and you can see it in the population too, because we've become a country that used to have almost no cars, and very few people owned homes, to a country that is filled with cars and new cars. People who have more money because they are allowed to invest in real estate, and there's more home ownership now. But that's because the whole lending the whole lending concept has caught on here and has become more available for the population, and has been a very good thing for the economy for Mexico.
Sure it is.
Oh, I'm sorry, but if we look at foreigners, those numbers are going to reverse again. I would say about only 10% of the buyers, foreign buyers, are using mortgages here because they are not familiar with or not happy with the interest rates, and the down payments are higher than what they're used to.
Or, I'm sorry, as you said at the beginning, agents and brokers said that it's a cash market.
Correct.
And we are not trying to make the buyers to think that they could have a bigger house or more than one house if they
Exactly.
consider a mortgage. You are more oriented to brokers and agents or to everybody? How do people reach you? How do people connect with you? And how is the process to get in contact with you?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I know our process because we work together, but I mean, in general.
In general, again, we've been in business for 20 years. When we moved to New York, not New York, when we moved to Mexico from New York, we brought that kind of mentality with us. We moved down here with a website. We moved down here with optimization in mind 20 years ago. So there was a period of time that if you Googled a mortgage for Mexico or even Hipotecas Mexico, you would come at Mexlend would be, my company would be higher on the search engines than Banorte, Santander, BBVA, everybody else, because they hadn't started. But that's put us in good stead because we also, the majority of our leads, the majority of our clients are coming in through the internet. And actually, I would say the majority of our clients come through direct contact and not through realtor referrals. Although realtor referrals are a very important part of our business, we have a very strong base.
Perfect. I think it's more or less everything. That the other thing that we were talking a couple of days ago, it was about mortgages in Nayarit, and that right now it's so that subject is so popular here in Puerto Vallarta, and as everybody knows, credits, bank credits in Nayarit are stopped right now, and they are not giving any credit. But as far as you told me the other day,
our lenders are still lending, and so I would say this is an opportunity for Mexicans to think about going with a non-traditional lender and crossing the line and maybe getting a US dollar loan. We have a lender who has just announced that they will take income and credit from Mexico as well for their loans. So if we're looking at Nayarit in that situation, then it's a possibility for people.
that's great. Don't know. I think it's more or less all my questions. If you want to add something that I just keep asking you,
Sure.
Something else that you want to say?
Yeah, I caught my train of thought back.
Okay.
And that is, historically in the past, what people would do is they would take a cash out refi or a line of credit against their property in the United States. And so they would get a lower interest rate on that, and they would bring that cash to Mexico. The realtors in Mexico thought, oh, well, everybody from the United States is just rich, and they're all bringing down $500,000 to buy this property. No, they were getting loans back in the States and bringing those down. But what's happened now is now our rates are equal. So doesn't make sense to get the cash out refi in the US and bring that money down here, in my opinion. There are several good reasons to close with a mortgage in Mexico. One, it's the safest way that you can close on a property. Not every realtor is the most forthcoming, and you can close on a property where the property documents may not be all in order, but it's closed and you've paid for them, and they'll say, oh, you can clean that up afterwards. And I know this has happened because I live here and I have friends, and they've been in these situations before. With a mortgage, that's never going to happen because you have a partner who's in that, and they are not going to take those chances on anything.
We have a client 2 days ago. I was talking with him on the phone, and I said, I want to buy a house for 5 million pesos, okay? but I want a mortgage, okay? So you are pre-qualified, you want me to direct you with, no. I will know who I'm going, but I have the money. So if you have the money, which is the reason that you want to get a mortgage, I don't want to get into troubles buying a property that is not legal, or I could have any problem in a couple of years. So I prefer to make a mortgage with a bank or with a lender, and then to cancel that mortgage in 1 year or 2 years. But I'm sure that papers will be perfect.
And
So
it's a great reason to do it. Also, you know, with the mortgage here, getting the mortgage here, all of our lenders, the majority of our lenders, I should say, are private or they're Mexican based. So these loans will not show on the client's credit reports in their home country, in the United States or Canada. So if you should get into trouble, which, you know, life happens and we all run into rough spots, their credit is still available to them. Okay. It's not showing on their credit there. The loans are also non-recourse. If they're in total trouble and they lose the property, well, they lose the property. The lender is not going after to attach their salaries, so it's not showing up in their credit reports. They're not having their salaries attached. It is the property itself is acting as the collateral for the mortgage. And you know, that's worked very well for our lenders too, because we also have to protect our lenders.
Oh, for sure.
And you know, the properties have been holding their value. I think that in the entire history of 20 years in business, we have had, I believe it's 4 foreclosures or 4 defaults on a mortgage, which is a incredible rate considering we've done hundreds of mortgages and put thousands of people into their dream homes in Mexico. You know, it's a great way to get here. And if you don't have the cash, then, you know, our company's mantra was and still is, why wait? ¿Por qué esperar? You know, do it now. We're not getting any younger. Life can happen, so enjoy it while you can. Go ahead and get the loan and move into that property. And if there's no prepayment penalty, you can always sell the property or pay it off.
it's like Mexicans said, if you don't, el que nada debe, nada teme. If you don't have to pay, you will not have anything in the future.
Yeah.
So mortgages are very good, but that's for sure for me. Okay, I don't know if you want to add something else. Or,
I think I've done. Just thank you for having me.
Oh, thank you for coming.
If you think of anything else, I'd certainly come back and.
We are going
talk.
to share with the audience if we can, your personal information or the company information, so they can reach you. I think that's more or less it about this one, but okay. I'm sure Katia she will want to have you in the future again. Thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you very much for watching. We are going to share with you Mexlend contact information. Don't forget to see the next video. Thank you.